Welcome back to my Supernatural Life Network, where we share true supernatural experiences told by real people. This is the last and final section of Christy's amazing story about her and her family's experience with an unidentified aircraft over Yosemite National Park. If you missed the first two parts of this story, you can find the links to the videos in the description that tell the events leading up to this point. Enjoy part 3. The ridge is too steep to climb, and it's not like we can just call for a helicopter. We walk back in the house, and Janet and Condra are sitting on the couch looking pale and scared. I can't wait to tell them what we saw, but immediately she says, "Something came over the house." And I say, "Oh my God!" This confirms that there was more than one craft. It hits me like a ton of bricks, and I start to get really frightened. I listen closely as she tells us of a huge dark triangle that hovered over the house. It was so dark it didn't reflect any light at all. It just looked like a big void that blocked the view of any stars. Like the other craft, it was completely silent. Both Janet and Condra say that they just knew they were not supposed to lean forward past the awning that hung over the house, that it was just understood. With the craft making no signs or sounds, they just understood to back away from the awning. Just then, the craft began dumping some kind of ash or ash-like substance. You can hear it hitting the trees all around. The reality of what just happened starts to sink in, and I'm starting to freak out. We start theorizing about what they could want. Is it the barium deposits in the mines? Gold? We look through some physics books and find some graphics that match what we saw, so we decide to finally call authorities like the Air Force Base to see if they've received any reports. While anyone we talk to is fascinated, not one person knows what to do or who to call. I have so many questions and no one to answer them. I call my boyfriend and future husband, Paul. He is always so grounded and realistic. Of course, he doubted. Who wouldn't? He doesn't really know what to think. I want to leave, but I am afraid because we have already had 2 mysterious breakdowns on the way in. I want him to come and get me, but I am afraid of what might happen to him as well. For all we know, one of us could get abducted. I am so terrified I fall to my knees and begin crossing myself, citing the Lord's Prayer. But I am not even Catholic. So much is going through my head. Are we being invaded? What about the recent abduction stories? I am falling to pieces. I am having a breakdown. Just as I start crying, my niece and nephew come in to comfort me. For their sake, I get it together. All night I've been hearing a constant low-pitched pulse or vibration. I can still hear it, but we haven't really stopped long enough to notice it until now. It isn't long before I work myself up into another frenzy, and Janet says, "Don't worry, they're not coming back." And I say, "They are. They're still here. Can't you feel that constant vibration? Can't you feel it? Can't you hear it?" No one else can confirm it, which is frustrating. I don't even know when I became aware of it, but I'm the only one that can hear it. I am feeling more alone now than ever. The upstairs neighbor, who is home now, comes down to ask if we can keep the commotion down. We try to gain our composure and ask her if she saw anything unusual last night, but she says no. We apologize and tell her that we saw some strange things in the sky last night without going into detail. The other ladies pack up with their kids and head home. I don't even remember saying goodbye. Janet, Joe, the kids, and I return to the campground where Joe and I had seen the first ship. For some reason, we feel safer in the daytime. We hike in as close to the ridge as we can go. I am a nervous wreck. I am jumpy and sleep deprived to top it off. There seem to be dandelion-like seeds blowing around everywhere, thousands of them. I immediately think of the ash-like substance that the triangle-shaped craft dumped on the cabin last night. Janet says they're just flowers, since Yosemite Valley has a very diverse floral population. I'm still jumpy though, so every time one hits my skin, I jump. My nerves are shot and I am terrified. We shouldn't be trying to confront this alone. My fears are soon justified. I look down the base of the ridge and see a humanoid figure sitting on top of a spinning rock. It has a black, flat head with no facial features. I rub my overworked eyes in disbelief and look again. I repeat the process a few times, but the figure is still there looking like some kind of sentry guarding something. Finally, I ask Janet if she sees what I'm seeing, only to hear her confirm it. Somehow I think I would have felt more at ease if she had said I was seeing things. I go over to my nephew and without divulging what I'm seeing, I ask him what he sees over by the base of the ridge. "A man with a black head on a spinning rock, Aunt Christy," he innocently replies. Janet tries to play it cool but safe. "Of course he isn't spinning on a rock. We need to go," she says. I try to work up courage to get a closer look, but I'm too scared and tired, so we end up heading back to get some rest. My one request is to make a stop to buy a disposable camera just in case we see them again, because I can still feel the vibration that I mentioned earlier. When we get home, Max calls to tell us that she saw another weird craft on her way back into Oakhurst. It looked like 2 small crafts with propellers pushing up a larger blimp-like craft. Who's to say what it was? But it's enough confirmation for me that they still haven't left. I call Paul again, and the poor guy doesn't know what to make of all this. But really, who would? He at least believes that we did see something, but because he isn't here, he can't be sure. I get off the phone and I'm torn between so many decisions. Before we know it, nightfall is upon us again. I can still hear the vibrations, and even feel them in my bones. It's frustrating that no one will listen to me. I'm conflicted because I want to see more, but I'm afraid. Janet, Joe, and the kids head off to bed despite my protests. I try to lay down for a minute as well, but my mind is racing. Curiosity gets the better of me and I venture out under the awning, but dare not go past it. Things are calm for a while, but soon enough I see a craft like the first one we saw, this time towards the other side of the house, up the valley. It begins to wobble like a toy top. I run back in to get Janet and Joe, feeling vindicated. They come out with me and watch. We think we see a few others that haven't come down yet. We continue watching until another ship comes down further back. This one has a beam, but we can't see it fully because our view is blocked by the ridge. The ship begins to move like a pendulum, eventually working up to really wide swings. We are very afraid still at this point, but this craft is far away and most of the activity has moved up into the mountains. This continues until late that night. I look through the viewfinder of the camera that I bought earlier, but the crafts are too far away. All that would show up is a white light if we're lucky. We head in to try to somehow get some sleep. We're still suffering from the sleep deprivation from the previous night. The third day was kind of a blur. I could still hear the pulse, but it did not seem quite as strong, so I knew they were still around. I at least felt a little better after having had some sleep. The fear still lingers though. Nightfall is upon us again, and it feels very ominous. Not much is happening in the sky, so I go into the house with everyone to watch TV or anything normal for that matter. My curiosity is overwhelming and I keep going back and forth from looking at the sky outside to being inside with everyone. I notice something on one of those trips outside and think to myself, here we go again. This time, 3 craft are doing some kind of operation. They're in a triangular formation, signaling to each other with their top beacons. The top ship flashes its beacon and the bottom left ship flashes its beacon back, and then starts to gyrate and shoot down a beam, as if it's trying to zero in on its target. It starts to rise, sucking something up in the beam. It then stops gyrating and flashes its beacon. Then the ship to its right flashes its beacon as if to confirm. Then all of a sudden the left ship sends a white beam over to the ship on the right. The ship that receives the beam flashes its beacon, and then the top ship responds. The right ship transfers a beam to the ship on top while simultaneously discharging down some sort of particulate matter in a beam of light. Then the craft on top takes off, straight up, and disappears into deep space, fast, deliberate, and efficient with the most beautiful luminous lights I've ever seen. This is the last operation we witness. We're drained and exhausted, so we just go in to get some rest. The next morning I notice the vibration is gone, and I immediately know, so are they. I immediately packed up as quickly as I could and headed home as fast as I could drive. I keep going over the events in my head the whole way home, with so many unanswered questions. I question if there's a God, why would he not protect us from these beings? Or maybe he sent them? Are they another creation of his that he looks after? Whatever the case, that was one hell of an experience. It's been nearly 30 years since I had this experience, and still to this day I always scan the skies when I'm out at night. I thank you for listening to my story. If you've had a similar experience, know that you are not alone and you have a friend in me. I will leave you with the following thought that I heard on a TV show once. Something unexplainable happened to Mary, Moses, Ezekiel, and something unexplainable happened to me and to thousands of others. The Bible is a book for explaining these kinds of things. Our daily life is filled with chores and errands that people 100 or even 50 years ago could not comprehend. Moses saw the burning bush. The disciples had to tell people that they saw Jesus rise from the dead, and Mary had to tell her husband she was pregnant even though she was still a virgin. That's a tall order. Sometimes God makes us witnesses to the unexplainable. Imagine carrying the burden of having experienced an impossible event. Could you? Could I? Most of us will never be tested in that way. Those that we celebrate today, they held firm. They never wavered even when ridiculed and those around them wouldn't listen. That's courage. That's faith. We hope you enjoyed Christy's incredible life-altering story. If you did like it, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have a supernatural story you want to share with the world, please see the information on the description on submissions. This is a free space where we share your true supernatural experiences.